Today's video is sponsored by Amazon Coins. As you may or may not know, Amazon Coins is a digital currency that you can use for in-game purchases in Epic 7 or any other apps found in the Amazon App Store. Saving up to 20% off on purchases for the Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood collab may just be what you need to secure a couple useful imprints and artifacts. Amazon Coins are currently available in the US, UK, Germany, France, Japan, Italy, Spain, and Australia. Use my link found in the description below to support me and the channel while getting these great discounts on your next in-game purchase. The link will also provide you with step-by-step instructions on getting Amazon App Store and Epic 7 installed on your device. Hey guys, welcome to another session of Epic 7. This is my initial thoughts video for Roy Mustang, the second pullable hero in the Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood collab, which is upcoming. Now, I know that in chronology, this video is coming out slightly later, and thank you for the YouTube comments on my Edward video and my ML Pablo video. People saying that you guys saying that you were waiting for this one, so hopefully I don't let you guys down. My thoughts for Roy Mustang. Definitely a lot more underwhelming, especially I already knew that the kits seemed to be kind of questionable, and then the damage mods came out and I'm like, okay, there's nothing really hooking me into Roy here outside that he's a cool character in the show and that I'm gonna pull for him because he's a limited hero. But it definitely seems that Edward will be taking the spotlight, especially not just the kit. I said that in his initial thoughts video, but now we have the damage mods. So if you don't know the damage mods, I did put it in the video description of that video, so you can check that out. But Edward is like a very strong hybrid damage dealer in terms of attack and HP. So in my opinion, he could benefit from like almost any build on any type of gear. And he'll be effective, and his role in my opinion is not just into debuffers, although a lot of people have debuffing S1. So he's gonna like he has a mechanic that will kind of encompass a ton of, you know, a ton of metas and a ton of future metas and future heroes. But he just looks really solid. So from kit wise to damage wise, he's going to definitely take the spotlight. ML Pavel, definitely a disappointment after I saw the data mine, so I'll also put that the damage mods in that video description as well. And Roy Mustang's damage mods are not super impressive. I mean, there are aspects that can make him impressive. I feel like Smilegate really wants to make him like this very pure damage dealer, which I guess like if you think about it in the show, the lore, it kind of makes sense. But along with the power of Roy Mustang from the show or from the manga itself, all comes with the negative aspects of his lore and characters, which I'll talk about, of course. But first things first, let's start off with the S3 animation. I usually kind of showcase the S3 animation later, but you know what? I really enjoy it. He does like throws the flame and then typical like snapping action. I even took these 2 frames because that's literally like, you know, the next frame he snaps and then ba-boom. Very satisfying animation, and actually it was pretty quick. I would say that the Full Metal Alchemist S3 animations are all pretty quick, but you definitely get like this nice narrative and storytelling into it. So anyways, I do enjoy the S3. I just hope that he will definitely, I hope that his character in practice will prove my review wrong, and my initial thoughts, because like I said at the beginning, I don't feel that he's too impressive. So let's get to it. So he's a fire mage, which is 100% fitting. I mean, if he was anything outside of being a fire mage, I don't know what Smilegate would have been doing. Like, it would be really forceful, kind of like Taeyu being Ice Warrior. But Roy Mustang is a Leo mage. If you're unfamiliar with Leos, we have one that, you know, I'm gonna use as a reference in terms of like build quality and how tough it is to build, and that is Melissa. Now Melissa had her kind of spotlight for a while, and then, you know, she got buffed I think twice now, and she's still not used. And I think one of the major reasons, and Melissa got like an EE, so it really helps her build, but one of the major reasons is the crit rate is actually really low. So although you have like pretty high attack, to get the crit rate, because crit rate, relatively speaking, it costs more gear score, and there's only really one source to get it, whereas like attack on a DPS, you could get it from the attack percent or flat attack if you have spare. But crit rate, there's only really that one stat to get the crit rate. So crit rate is always like very, very expensive. And of course speed. So speed and crit rate, those are the two most expensive gear scoring stats when you think about gear. So when you're looking at a hero with those two stats are pretty high, that's generally pretty good value because they cost the most anyway. But with the low crit rate comes the very high attack. Like I said, the imprint concentration is at 18%. Assuming or presuming you are going for triple S, you're getting an additional over 250 attack with the self imprint there. So you know that becomes very, very handy because of course you can lower the attack needed for the gear to find it in the crit rate. But like I said, it's just kind of diminishing return, diminishing value. Whereas in Edward's case, like he has a solid stat line, 117 base speed, good bulk, like the attack is on the low side, but they gave him what he really needed anyways, which is crit rate. So Edward versus Roy, if you have the budget or have the resources to pull one, or like kind of get a couple imprints on one, it's definitely Edward. Like I said, I feel like just in the long run, it would just be better value. Attack imprints, unless you have really high attack, like in this case Roy Mustang or like Hua Yang, you're not gonna benefit from it too much. Like obviously every imprint has a benefit, but in Roy's case, I'm skeptical about him being used in the meta. So maybe when he returns he gets buffed, or if he returns he gets buffed, and then by then maybe you can triple S. So for example, like the slime collab may be due to return since we did get ReZero. And slime collab, like Rimuru is still very powerful, very oppressive. Milim is like had always been a countering certain things, but she's a really a pocket pick in my opinion. And I was gonna think about like going triple S for them, but both of them are attack imprints. Milim having higher base attack, so actually higher value there, but I'm not going to anymore. And I feel like Roy Mustang, like out the gate, you already can tell that he won't necessarily need the imprint concentration. Like I said, it probably won't benefit too much. But there you have the stat line. I mean, he's a mage, so 645 defense makes sense. The health is uber super low. I said uber. Super low. And in Roy Mustang's case, it's like the defense and the HP doesn't really matter. So like him having, like choosing this specific class for Roy, I feel is kind of strange. That's just my opinion. You get the high attack, of course, but then you have like no crit rate. The speed is like okay, but then you have like, you know, ideally you want something with crit rate, in my opinion. That's just my opinion. But let's talk about the skills now. So skill 2, Hero of Ishval. So at the start of the first battle, gains 40 fighting spirit and grants Flame Alchemist. Damage suffered in one attack does not exceed 71, or if you maximal this, it would be 51% of the max health. So functions like the T Surin, like ML Celine, so you need a 2-shot to kill him. So I know a lot of people are thinking like lifesteal set, but like he doesn't have like innate ability to counter. He can't use the Knuckles artifact from Milim because he doesn't have evasion. And even though her artifact is she can counter, or you can counter if you don't get crit. And so in his case, like he can't benefit from that. He doesn't have Celine's immortality to hold that one turn, you know, in case someone tries to 2-tap her. So he can be 2-tapped. He's very vulnerable. T-Surin will go into stealth CR boost. So like to kill off like a T-Surin and ML Celine with pure crit damage is much more difficult than it would be for Roy. Now the other thing is the Flame Alchemist is granted at the start of the battle, so that's great. That started the battle, not start of the turn, so that's slightly different from like Milim. Oh, actually no, Milim's Milimai does actually start at the start of the battle, but then also at the start of every single turn. So Flame Alchemist increased the hit chance and attack by 20%. So 20% like increase buff, and he can self-attack buff. We're talking about like loads and loads of attack, right? So like it's on paper, not in practice, on paper it sounds pretty nuts. I definitely think that, like, you know, that's not something that you want to dismiss. But again, it's like, if you have all this power, like, can you actually take the turn to do it? And we'll discuss that a bit. So we have his only survival is really just hope that the damage dealers that he's facing don't have an extra attack like Shu, or their turn cycling isn't like going one after another, or they don't have something that can soul burn into 2 turns. Like that's literally his survival. And the other thing is that Flame Alchemist cannot be dispelled unless attacked by an ice elemental enemy. Now, I didn't even catch on to this at first until like my guild leader was saying that, he was like basically like laughing at the fact that like the lore carries over. So at least in the show, Roy Mustang, if his gloves get wet, he can't ignite his flame, right? So like that's his weakness. So it is like, it's cool that they brought this element in, but it's like, could it not be something else that like this doesn't get dispelled? Because at the end of the day, his whole kit functions on Flame Alchemist. His whole kit really functions on Flame Alchemist, not even the damage suffering thing. So like, yeah, put him on lifesteal set, like just hope that he gets a turn quick enough to actually siphon that lifesteal. Otherwise, I feel that even though the 51% like HP, you know, damage suffered, all that, like all of them are like, they have some kind of lifestealing aspect, or you want to put it on lifesteal. But for him, it's just like he doesn't have any protection, and I don't know if lifesteal actually benefits. I feel like if anything, you probably want some kind of outside attack buffer, put him on book and spam his S1. That's just like my conclusion, even halfway. But Scorching Heat, skill 3, increasing after. So it could, if one thing is that it has to consume 80 fighting spirit. When you start at 40 fighting spirit. Okay. So anyways, consumes 80 fighting spirit. So after increasing attack of the caster for 2 turns, attacks all enemies with consecutive barrage of flames, and grants Flame Alchemist to the caster. When there are 3 or fewer enemies, damage dealt increases with fewer enemies. And then we already read the Flame Alchemist description. Now this is purely raw damage skill, no cooldown on this because again it consumes fighting spirit. Although you know, Zahak is not a very meta hero, it is something that you do have to take in mind that he can reduce his resource, right? So that he like he won't be able to use Scorching Heat. But Scorching Heat in and of itself is actually, again, on paper versus practice, on paper, it's pretty impressive. Attack rate is at a 1.2 times mod, and this is an AoE skill, okay? It is a self-attack buff beforehand too. So you definitely have to keep that in mind. So it's like self-attack buff and then he goes AoE. The damage mods per enemy loss on the field. So for 4 you get 0 increase in power. For 3 you get a 20%, 2 you have a 30%, 1 you have a 2 you have a 40%, 3 you have a 60% more damage. So it feels like this skill is not only a really strong AoE damage dealing skill, but also a nice finisher, right? So assuming that somehow he survives all the way to the end, it's 1v1. If he does his S3, that enemy is most likely dead. Because it would also be a single target. I definitely think that he's a pen set hero. So I believe his best build will probably be speed set, pen set. I'm just not sure about lifesteal set, unless you got barriers and massive heals and all that, all those kind of gimmicks. I feel like Chatty might not be such a good one on him, because they literally have to inflict that 50% HP. But because he has high attack, so I think maybe some people will think about it. But that's just my thoughts on that. So the S3 has, let's see here, 20, 25, 30, 40. Ooh, oh, it has 40% raw damage. So this skill is, it is really strong. It is really strong, especially with the fewer enemies on the field. Now S1, I think, is definitely the more impressive skill. I definitely think that, like, if anything, he'll shine with the S1, but there's a lot of conditions. So I feel like if anything, if he's used in anything, he has to be used in some kind of aggro and cleave comp. And it's just like he's a very solid single target damage dealer. That's how I would look at him. Skill 1 attacks the enemy with flames, increase combat range of the caster by 15%. When used on the caster's turn, if the caster is granted Flame Alchemist, activates Heat Wave instead of Ignite. So Heat Wave attacks the enemy with a huge flame and increases the combat radius of the caster by 30% instead, and then penetrates the target's defense by 50%. So 50% defense pen, pretty big deal in my opinion. Soul Burn, which is 20 souls, will grant an extra turn. So realistically, you can go like if he gets the first turn. So like this is something that's missing on him, like versus a Milim, right? Milim can self-attack buff with the S1 Soul Burn into an S3, or if you have multiple souls, S1 then attack buffed, it's attack buff, and then S1 again into S3. Whereas if you have an outside source of attack buff, this would greatly benefit you, because you already have the Flame Alchemist on turn 1, and like I said, this is why I'm thinking like maybe in a cleave and aggro comp he would work, so that he doesn't risk getting touched by ice and therefore losing his Flame Alchemist. Because again, I think that the S2 is very solid, but you really want to like get that turn off before anything can happen to him. You require 30 fighting spirit as well, so if you include the S2 starting at 40 fighting spirit, this consumes 80. You're still needing two S1s in order to get 80, right? So that part was like, oh, that's really, it makes him way harder to use than I think Smaug wanted him to be. So I believe his best artifact honestly would probably be Talgol's Ancient Book, so he can soul burn into his own S3. And I almost wish that his S3 had some form of protection, so like he plays more like a Milim. Now I'm not saying that like I want a Milim copycat, so I'm not saying like, oh, give him evasion or anything like that. It's just like I feel like it would have been a smarter design and almost a more useful design if you had allowed him just go on book, soul burn S3, and that S3 has some form of protection, whether it is immortality, which I guess doesn't matter because he can't die in 2 hits, or like some kind of invincibility or something along those lines. I'm not quite sure what it is, like or stealth even, like that could even be good too, like stealth for like Ice Kisei. So I feel like he is definitely primed to be like, he's actually insane, but then it takes so many conditions to make his entire kit really work. Whereas like someone like Ed is just be like, oh, if you take him into debuffers, they get punished. If you don't take him into debuffers, the way he's looking right now is that he's pretty solid as a DPS. Like bruisers, if you're playing standard comp, bruisers always have really high value. Warrior, I mean, he's a warrior. Edward can also use Sigurd Scythe. He can also benefit from Lifesteal set and on his own artifact, I think. And in practice, we'll definitely find out. But his damage mods from HP and attack are really beneficial. You get an attack buffer on the outside there. I just don't see how Ed can be bad versus like Roy, where it's just like he has so much power, but then he has like so many conditions. So like it kind of does remind me like he has to really put on the gloves, you know what I mean, in order to actually start looking cool. And this show, like everybody is like afraid of him. He's a total man, I don't want to say that, I don't want to swear words. I don't want to use swear words, but like gangster, okay? So he's a total gangster. But yeah, so the damage mod on the S1 is really the impressive part in my opinion. So attack rate is low at 0.8, and it's assuming that you have Flame Alchemist. This is why they tuned it to a 0.8 and not higher. But the defense pen is, like it says there in the Heatwave description, it is a 50% defense pen. Okay, it does not trigger a dual attack when he's using Heat Wave, so you're not gonna draw anyone into a dual attack there. So, I mean that could be something that is missing, but I won't even nitpick about that. The damage mods I have set, actually, I put some theory craft together about a 250 speed Roy Mustang. If it's on really good gear on pen set, I think you can get about 3,800 attack, and this is like ideally with self imprint. 3,800 attack, 270 crit damage, assuming you have an outside attack buffer, which is pretty easy to get these days. There's so many forms of attack buff, that's quite meta, and then people can't really risk banning the attack buff a lot of the times if you draft correctly. So let's just assume there's an attack buff. He has pen set. I put on pen set. This is done in Maffey's damage calculator, and then the DP or the target has 1500 defense. Now I did not set elemental advantage. The elemental advantage is just 10% more damage anyway, but 1500 defense, no damage mitigation, no damage reduction. And what you get there is about, for the S1, it's about 11,500 damage. 11,500 damage S1 that you can soul burn, and you can do it technically twice. Assuming he gets the turn, assuming all those things happen, like you still have Flame Alchemist on, you didn't get S1 by a DN or an S1 by an Amelia or something like that. Assuming that's the case, then you have Soulburn, boom, S1, Soulburn, boom, S1. You have 60% CR boost, and if you have some kind of follow-up booster or maybe Sasha Ethanes or something like that, he can almost get another turn. So and then he can do his S3. So you can see that there, in my opinion, there's quite a lot of potential in Roy in terms of like the perfect draft. The perfect draft, and your enemy doesn't draft any ice. He can be solid, and this is what I mean. It's just like I feel like they just missed the mark. The other thing would be like, you know, with all this raw power, the question would be, well, what do I bring Roy into, right? Like, what does he deal with? And generally, unless you have like a meta breaking hero in terms of like the mechanics are actually meta breaking, then what you really need in a hero is that like the hook, right? Like you need something to sell that hero, and generally it would be like a counter. So in the case of, let's say, Ed, he counters like at least predominantly like Ran and Peyra. But really, if you think about it, it's any person that debuffs, which is a large amount of like a pool that's really large, right? And so like he can deal with that. Like, what does Roy deal with? And I think that's the issue, and that's why I feel like Roy, if someone can brilliantly come up with like, you know, really easy ways to make him good into an aggro comp, I think he's solid, right? It just means that if he's on book, you need a Bellion pre-ban for sure. You don't need Angel of Light. He'll be mainly focusing on S1 anyway, but you probably want to have him at like triple S. And you just basically want his Flame Alchemist to actually be enabled. You just don't want to be touched by someone who can like open with an ice hero that is at 300 speed, which in my opinion is pretty hard to escape these days. It's just like that's literally the meta, and that I think Edward is trying to counter. But in terms of Roy, he will suffer in that same meta. That's why if he's usable at all, it would have to be. It had to be cleave, it had to be aggro. You have to take the first turn, in my opinion. So I think that that is what I would predict. I don't see him being a very, very solid choice as a bruiser type of play, like a standard hero play. That's my thoughts at least. Now his artifact, Ignition Cloth Gloves, increases hit chance by 20% and then the attack by 14%. So on top of his passive, giving him hit chance, he has additional hit chance. Now I'm kind of like confused on this. Like you get hit chance by 20%. You have another hit chance by 20%. Like, is he to counter Violet? Because Violet's not really a big thing, and Rylet as well. Like even with the Irvelin artifact buff, it's not like people draft him a lot more. He's still more of a YOLO unit and a very solid one-shot with decent like survivability if he dodges. But like, what is this artifact? Who is this artifact trying to sell to, right? I was thinking like this could potentially work on Milim too. If you use the Milim in Guild War or something, because I used to run her on Symbol if I wanted to like guarantee never missing Violet. Well, actually technically you could still miss Violet even with Symbol, but that being said, like you lower the chances of actually missing, right? But like with this, it's like, okay, yeah, okay, sure, he has more hit chance than Milim, but like does that mean he's good? Or same amount of hit chance as Milim, but does that mean like this is good? So I still think that mages, the issue with mage artifacts is that if you're some kind of DPS mage, like Sylvan Sage Vivian, like you got Chatty, some people are trying other artifacts, but like at the end of the day, like Arya as well, like you could put on the F10 artifact, you put on a lot of stuff, but like at the end of the day, if you have Toggle's Ancient Book, you can use that book not just for that hero alone, but you can use it for like other support, right? So like a Soulburn Aros S1 on the first turn, whatever, that could make or break the game. I just feel like this artifact, if it's on Roy, you probably want to Soulburn. Like I said, I think he needs that like first turn be like soul burn, S1, and then on his next turn S3, because you know, all that, the defense pen, the CR boost, all that's super highly beneficial. You want to get it off before he gets touched by ice. And then just this artifact is just like, it's cool, and I think you should definitely get it. Hit chance probably going to be useful maybe in the future, especially if they introduce more evasion heroes that we can't deal with. But outside of that, the 14% attack I guess is notable as well, is that the 14% attack will be added on top of like whatever total attack you have, so that just makes his attack even higher. So like maybe I'll add that. Hold on one sec. I'm gonna add the attack percent increase by 14% on the Mappy damage calculator with the same stat line. He does an additional, well, he does 12,540 damage. So realistically about 1,000 more damage with just this artifact, but that's assuming it's maxed. So again, it's just like, do I rather have the soul burn where I double my damage, or do I rather have an increase of that, you know, like 1,000 damage? Like, to me, I would take the soul burn any day of the week, especially if I'm gonna draft him into some kind of aggro and cleave comp. So that's the unfortunate part for me in terms of Roy. I think, again, on paper, everything looks kind of good except the Dispelling Flame artifact, Flame or Alchemist with the Ice hero. And literally, it's just like, as if he gets touched by an Ice hero, he gets Dispelled. So if it wasn't for that fact, everything else, in my opinion, is, like, on paper, is like, it's good enough. But then the question remains is like, well, in the meta that he has to be shoved into, does he even have a place? And I will say in this video, at least conclusively, I don't believe so. All right, I don't believe he has a place. So in my opinion, of course, you know, watch RTA streamers, look at YouTube reviews, really objectively look at those reviews and really see, is it because someone is forcing content that he's usable in those situations, or will he actually be usable? Hopefully that will help you determine whether or not you should, you know, I would recommend going for him, like one, and then one artifact. But I am hesitant to say that you want to pull more than that. Again, I've made my points pretty clear. So anyways, I'll end this this video here for the video recording's sake. If you guys have Discord, check out the Discord server, follow me on Twitter, subscribe to YouTube if you haven't, and as always, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys on the next one.